Hi there, my name's George Egan and I'm a chartered financial planner. As part of my journey, I've been pretty much constantly been buying books on personal finance. So I thought, in line with the question that I received, it might be worth putting together some thoughts on which in my view are the best and most overrated books on various aspects of finance. So let's firstly go over just personal finance and the best. So, Meaningful Money Handbook. The reason I'd like this book, and I'd recommend it, is that it's an easy to understand, excellent grounding in all the key areas of personal finance. The book is generally around the three principal rules I mentioned in the 3 golden rules of personal finance, which is spend less than you earn, protect against disaster, and invest wisely. But I just think if you want to start a book on personal finance and are from the UK, this is what you need. It's easy to understand and it gives you a really good foundation. So next one is Simple Wealth, Inevitable Wealth by Nick Murray. This book is a really great starting point to understand the key things about personal finance. It can be quite tricky to get hold of, and in fact for me I had to basically buy it direct as sort of as a PDF through the website because the cost of it was absolute fortune when I looked at it online. But there are some great quotes and I really took quite a lot from it, especially in relation to some kind of the summary points which are useful. So let's go over some of the quotes. Somebody is sitting in the shade today because someone planted a tree a long time ago. You know, it's a great quote on long-term investing. Wealth is freedom. The only meaningful measure of long-term returns is the real rate of return you earn, the nominal rate less inflation. A portfolio is not a plan. It's the last step in creating a financial plan. The portfolio is the working part of a financial plan to achieve your goals. And there's a bit about financial advisors where they say financial advisors worth their weight in gold if they help you avoid mistakes by keeping you focused on your life goals and not on the market. So, the richest man in Babylon. You know, there's a Voltaire quote which says, history never repeats itself, man always does. So I left this book in London, but the reason I like this book is it's probably a bit of a weird one and it might not be a good starter book. But it's a book taken from parables from ancient Babylon, literally thousands of years ago. The thing that's so interesting is that the kind of the laws and the rules they mention here about personal finance are exactly the same as any of the fundamental personal finance techniques that I or anyone else in this space talks about. I'm actually going to do an episode on this, but the point is when I say and we talk about, you know, the 3 golden rules of personal finance, or in fact any of these rules, these concepts show up here in teachings which are thousands of years old. So if you're willing to look through, you know, the stories to the core message, there's a lot to be taken here. The downside here is the book often has ye olde writing, so it may not be easy to read as others here. But if you can look past that to the core message, there's a lot there. You know, for example, 5th law of gold. Gold flees the man who would force it to impossible earnings, or who followeth the alluring advice of tricksters and schemers, or who trusts it to his own inexperience and romantic desires in investment. So, the psychology of money. I'm a huge fan of Morgan Housel's writing, who writes this book, and this book is just amazing story after story. You might have noticed it in pretty much all my episodes where I try and explain points in the context of stories. This was influenced by a blog post Morgan wrote called Best Story Wins, and it's just how we as humans are much more impacted by stories than the facts. So I've tried to kind of incorporate that into my work. The book is a collection of stories which perfectly explain, you know, certain areas of personal finance and how it reacts with us as human beings. There are so many great examples, you know, but the most interesting area of personal finance is how we as humans interact, characterize, interpret this completely inanimate but essential thing we call money. I'd go as far as say this book will change the way you think about money, so definitely give it a go. Okay, so most overrated. I've gone for, it's not really a personal finance book, but The Snowball by Warren Buffett. This book is long. Now, you might rightly be thinking this is a business book, and yeah, fair enough. I just didn't have another personal finance book that I thought deserved the title Most Overrated. But look, this book is very, very long, and it's mainly a story about Warren Buffett's life. There's not a huge amount that you can take from it. Him as a person is interesting. I'd actually suggest if you are interested, I'd read the essays of Warren Buffett, which is Lessons for Investors and Managers. I just thought this was a slightly better interpretation. You learn much more about him and his approach to business through that. So, investing. Probably the first one, basic one, is Investing Demystified. This book is pretty comprehensive and gives a good start to the core ideas behind investing. Some of the parts are a bit, in my view, rule of thumb, so it can be a bit basic. But if you want a starting point on the core parts of investing, this is a good place to start. Some good stories and anecdotes and stuff to be taken from there. So the next one is Your Complete Guide to Factor-Based Investing, Larry Sudrow. If you really like the science behind investing, but perhaps don't have the time to read the academic papers, then this is the book for you. It's easy enough to understand, it gives a really comprehensive view of the science behind investing and factor-based investing and how we've developed things on an evidence basis. So the next one is Cullen Roach, Pragmatic Capitalism, What Every Investor Needs to Know About Money and Finance. Excellent book about going into the background about money, finance, and how our economy works. Cullen Roach has really great insights and it's well worth a read. He also has a great blog, which I'll put in the description, which has some interesting points in relation to global asset allocation. And yeah, he's just a really interesting read. So I might get some stick for this, Most Overrated, The Intelligent Investor. Okay, so this book is supposedly the seminal book on investing, written by Benjamin Graham, who was Warren Buffett's mentor. It does give a good background in security analysis, but the reason why I've said it's an overrated book is I think it can kind of be seen as a starting point to read in relation to investing or personal finance. And I honestly think people coming into this being the first book wouldn't get that much out of it. A lot of this information here is pretty dated, and it's also at a level where I don't think it would really help most people, maybe even spur them on to start doing their own valuations as a good place to investing, which it rarely is if you're beginning. So, I don't think someone just getting into personal finance should be picking up this book. A lot of its areas just aren't relevant, and it's more likely to drive someone away from finance than to get them into it, in my view. Okay, so economics, right. Big Debt Crisis, a 3-book series. I really enjoyed this, but I warn you, this won Sleeper Award for me, which is that it's the book that I started reading, which made me fall asleep. It's a historical and structural review on debt. No, wait, I've lost you, come back. But it is interesting, and it's a really good background about economics, and there's so much noise about debt levels and what the implications for that can be. This gives a pretty good and thorough historic background to that. Next one on economics, this is The People's Case for Quantitative Easing by Francis Coppola, not the film director, The Economist, and it provides a detailed and pretty sound review of the financial crisis, the response by central banking, the issue with reliance on monetary policy. Well worth a read if you are interested in this stuff, and also some really interesting bits from which insights you can take from how central bankers have dealt with the COVID crisis compared to the financial crisis in 2008. So again, interesting read if you're into this stuff. Economics for Everyone, Jim Stamford, a short guide to the economics of capitalism, and it's just a good and comprehensive view about how our economy works, the things that are good and bad about capitalism, the context of it in the modern world. I think it's just an interesting read, an interesting starting point if you do wonder about how the economy works and where capitalism is going. So, general business book, Anything You Want, Derek Sivers. This is such a good book, and it's sort of the creative person's business book. This book talks about Derek's business, and he founded CD Baby and his approach to business and life. I don't want to spoil too much, but I'll go over a few quotes. Don't be on your deathbed Sunday having squandered your one chance at a life, full of regret because you pursued little distractions instead of big dreams. No business plan survives first contact with customers, quite like that one. And the excellent ideas are just a multiplier of execution. Okay, so if I only had one book, well then it would either be a trade-off between Anything You Want or The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel, but I will go with The Psychology of Money. The reason I enjoy it so much is it sort of brings together the things that I want to try and express in this channel much better than I ever could, which is storytelling, the human part of personal finance. There's very little technical, and it's certainly not a how-to, but it will make you recognize that personal finance is more personal than it is finance. And I sort of feel this book is almost where we need to try and take personal finance. Money and health are two things that none of us can opt out on, but yet we're more concerned about teaching Battle of Hastings in school, and we can get talking about the more interesting part of personal finance. We can get people more engaged with it. So, almost well timed. I think there's a helicopter outside, which you may or may not be able to hear, but I'm back in Manchester, what do you expect? I was a little on the fence about doing an affiliate link, but I thought, do you know what, it's not free to run the channel, so why not? But if you got any value from any of this, I've decided to put these books as links, as affiliate links, so if you would like to support the channel at no cost to you, just follow the links to buy the books, or don't, it's your choice. This has been Principles Personal Finance. I really appreciate you watching, see you next week.